Let me tell you something important. Not everything that walks through your front door is meant to remain. Some things carry a presence. Some objects, no matter how harmless they may seem, carry weight, spiritual weight. You may think it's just a piece of jewelry, a souvenir, or a childhood keepsake. But if it was ever connected to darkness, if it was ever used in ungodly practices, then it brings that spiritual residue with it. It doesn't come empty-handed, it comes with influence. The enemy is subtle. He doesn't always show up with horns and chaos. Sometimes he arrives as a memory, wrapped in sentimentality, attached to objects you can't seem to let go of. It could be a ring from a relationship God told you to leave, a letter from someone who pulled you away from your purpose, a piece of clothing that keeps dragging your mind back to who you used to be, instead of who God is calling you to become. And then we wonder, why can't we move forward? Why do we feel heavy, burdened, or stuck in cycles we've already prayed to break? You can't walk into freedom while dragging chains from the past. Some of those chains look like gifts, but they're really spiritual ties. As long as you keep something that represents a soul tie, a trauma, or a sin, the attachment remains. This is why God told Israel to destroy idols, not just avoid them. Because he knows what you tolerate can take root. Spiritual contamination is real. And some homes are filled with objects that were never meant to be there in the first place. So here's the question. What have you allowed into your home that God never gave permission for? What's lingering in your atmosphere that's keeping you from walking fully in his peace? This is your wake-up call. Take inventory. Because some things must go before his presence can fully come. Not everything in your home belongs there. Some objects carry spiritual weight, especially if tied to darkness. That old jewelry, inherited artifact, or keepsake from a broken relationship, if it was dedicated to another spirit or used in ungodly practices, it's an open door. People cling to gifts from relationships God told them to leave, rings, letters, clothes. These items anchor you to the past. You wonder why freedom feels distant, why old cycles repeat. That harmless item, it's a chain. A woman endured nightmares for years after fleeing abuse. She prayed, fasted, no relief. One day she found a necklace from her abuser. Seemingly trivial, but holding it, she felt crushing pain. She discarded it. The nightmare stopped. The enemy wants you to hoard these things. They're legal claims on your life, tethering you to what God already severed. Gifts, symbols, reminders. They're not sentimental, they're snares. It's not just personal items, decorations, carvings, or statues from those hostile to your destiny, given under pretense, prayed over by unbelievers. In the natural, they're decor. In the spirit, they're invitations for oppression. Today, ask God, what have I kept that's keeping me bound? Then act. Break ties with the past. Remove what hell uses to mute your purpose. Objects lie silent, but the spirits behind them never sleep. Cleanse your space. Your freedom is worth more than mementos. Let me tell you this clearly. Not everything that enters your home is meant to stay. Some objects carry a spiritual weight far beyond what the eye can see. If those things were ever connected to darkness, they bring that influence with them. You might think you just have an old piece of jewelry, an inherited artifact, or a keepsake from a past relationship. But if it was ever dedicated to another spirit or used in ungodly practices, it carries an open door in the spiritual realm. Many people hold on to gifts from relationships God has already told them to walk away from. Rings, letters, clothing. Things that keep them tied to a past that no longer serves them. They wonder why they can't move forward, why their hearts feel heavy, why they keep slipping back into old cycles. As long as you keep something that represents that bond, the attachment remains. A woman once shared with me how she struggled with nightmares for years after leaving an abusive relationship. She prayed, fasted, and sought the Lord, but the torment didn't stop. One day, while going through her things, she found an old necklace he had given her. At first, it seemed like just a piece of jewelry, but the moment she held it, she felt the weight of all the pain she had endured. She knew deep in her spirit that it carried a connection she no longer needed. The moment she got rid of it, the nightmares stopped. The enemy wants you to keep these things. He knows that as long as you hold on to them, a part of you remains trapped in what God has already freed you from. He wants you to hold on to gifts from past relationships, symbols of past sins, objects tied to old struggles, because these things become anchors, spiritual ties that pull you back just when you're about to move forward. It's not just personal items either. Some people have things in their homes given by others, things that came with a wrong spirit attached. Maybe someone gave you a statue, a piece of art, or a carved figure that was prayed over by someone who does not serve God. Maybe you accepted a gift from someone jealous or with ill intentions. It might seem like just an object, but in the spiritual realm, it's a doorway. If you want peace, if you want to walk in freedom, you must take authority over what you allow in your home. Remove anything that does not align with God's kingdom. God calls us to walk in His presence, and that presence cannot dwell in a space filled with darkness. There was a man who told me his home felt different after receiving a certain gift from a family member. At first, he ignored the feeling, thinking it was just in his head. But then tension began to rise, arguments became more frequent, and a strange heaviness filled the atmosphere. He prayed for peace, but nothing seemed to change. It wasn't until he asked the Lord for discernment that his spirit was drawn to that very object. Without hesitation, he removed it from his home. After praying over his space, the shift was immediate. The peace returned, the heaviness lifted, and the atmosphere was lighter. This story is not uncommon. The spiritual realm moves beyond what we see and feel physically. Objects can carry the weight of the spirits that once had a hold on them. You might be holding on to something given by a family member or friend, a gift that seemed harmless but came with an unseen burden. These gifts, unknowingly accepted, can become spiritual footholds for darkness to creep in. When we receive objects without prayer or discernment, we risk welcoming spirits that are not of God. It's important to take inventory of what you keep. Ask God to reveal anything that may be tying you to past struggles, to old wounds, or to spiritual battles He has already won for you. The enemy is clever. If he cannot get you to go back to the place of bondage, he will try to keep you looking backward, trapped in the past, so you miss the blessings God has prepared for your future. Letting go of objects that carry spiritual weight isn't just about removing physical things. It's about breaking chains, releasing your spirit from what holds you captive. The past no longer has power over you when you choose to let go. God's call is for you to walk in freedom, peace, and fullness of His presence. Make room in your life and in your home for God's presence. Clear out anything that blocks His light. When you do, you create space for His joy, power, and unshakable peace to fill every corner of your heart and home. There is a spiritual law many overlook, but it is simple and powerful. Whatever you welcome, you give permission to stay. This means that when you let something into your life, whether it's an object, a habit, or even an agreement, you are opening a door and giving it a place in your home, your heart, and your atmosphere. Think about that for a moment. It's not just about what you say out loud. It's about what you tolerate, what you allow. Some people wonder why they feel restless in their own homes, why peace seems so elusive, why tension lingers in the air. They might blame stress or life's challenges, but often the root cause is something unseen, something they have unknowingly given permission to stay. I know a man who told me he never felt comfortable in his own house. Even though he lived there for years, every night felt heavy. It was as if a weight pressed down on his chest. He woke up exhausted, anxious, burdened. At first he thought it was just him, his own struggles. But after praying for wisdom and discernment, God showed him the truth. His home was filled with objects from places he never questioned, decorations from cultures that worship other gods, souvenirs from lands known for idolatry, symbols he didn't understand but thought looked interesting. At first, they seemed harmless, even beautiful, but in the spiritual realm, they were invitations for spirits that do not belong to God. When he began removing those things, he noticed a shift immediately. The heaviness lifted, the anxiety faded. He slept peacefully for the first time in years. This story is a reminder that our homes are not just physical spaces, they are spiritual atmospheres. And what we welcome shapes the spirit of our environment. The enemy doesn't need a loud invitation, just a small opening, a tolerance, a foothold. If you give him a place, he will turn it into a stronghold. But God calls us to be vigilant, to guard our homes and hearts, to be mindful of what we welcome, and to honor the presence of God in every space. Some doors don't open because of what we say. They open because of what we tolerate. It's subtle but powerful. Often, we don't realize the spiritual weight of the things we bring into our homes or our lives. We think it's just a decoration, or it's just a gift, or it's harmless. But many times those objects carry a spirit, sometimes an uninvited spirit. There was a woman who shared with me how her children were plagued with nightmares every night. She prayed, she anointed their room, she spoke blessings over them, but nothing changed. One day, the Holy Spirit prompted her to look closely at what was in their room. Her eyes landed on some toys and characters from shows she had thought were innocent, but which actually carried dark themes. The spirits behind those shows were not of God. The moment she removed those toys, the nightmares stopped. That's the reality of spiritual contamination. It creeps in through things we overlook. It isn't always obvious, but it's real. The enemy doesn't need an open invitation. He only needs an open door. And that door can be an object, a habit, a word, a thought pattern. Anything you allow in without discernment. When you give space to the wrong spirit, it will take root and grow. And before you know it, that foothold becomes a stronghold, pulling you away from God's peace and freedom. God calls us to be watchful, to be intentional about what we allow into our lives and homes. Cleansing your home isn't just a physical act, it's a spiritual declaration. It's telling the enemy, you have no place here. It's choosing to fill your space with things that glorify God, invite His presence, and keep darkness far away. Your home is more than walls and furniture. It's a spiritual atmosphere. The Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. But that freedom can be blocked if you allow objects or influences tied to darkness to remain in your space. When you take authority over your home, you are declaring that no evil has a place there. It's a bold stand, a spiritual boundary. This means you must remove anything that doesn't align with God's kingdom, whether it's an object, a habit, or even negative words that have been spoken over your life and your family. I once met a man who noticed a strange heaviness in his home after receiving a gift from a relative. At first he ignored it, but arguments increased, tension filled the air, and peace seemed to vanish. He prayed and fasted, but nothing changed. Finally, he asked God for discernment and was led to that very gift. When he removed it and prayed over his home, peace instantly returned. Your home should be a sanctuary, a place where God's peace reigns and His presence dwells. Taking authority means identifying what doesn't belong and casting it out in Jesus' name. It is spiritual warfare that demands courage and faith. Remember, God's power is greater than any darkness that tries to invade your space. When you step up and claim that power, you create a stronghold of peace and protection for yourself and your family. Many people hold on to items from past relationships or seasons of life without realizing the spiritual weight those objects carry. It might be a ring, a letter, a piece of clothing, things that remind you of a time God has called you to leave behind. But here's the truth. As long as you hold on to these objects, you keep an invisible door open in your spirit. This door lets the enemy trap you in old cycles, pain, and heartbreak. You wonder why you feel stuck, why your heart is heavy, or why you keep getting pulled back to places God has freed you from. A woman once shared how she struggled with nightmares for years after leaving an abusive relationship. She prayed and fasted, but the torment didn't stop, until she found an old necklace he had given her. It seemed innocent, but the moment she held it, she felt the weight of all the pain again. When she removed it from her life, the nightmare stopped. God calls us to walk in freedom, not in chains. Part of that freedom means releasing what no longer serves us, especially when those things carry spiritual ties to the past. It's not only our own possessions that can carry spiritual weight. Sometimes, gifts from others can bring unseen influences into our homes. Maybe someone gave you a statue, a piece of art, or a carved figure that seemed beautiful or meaningful. But what if that gift was prayed over or dedicated by someone who does not serve God? What if the giver had jealousy or bad intentions? You might think it's just an object, but in the spiritual realm, it can become a doorway for dark influences to enter your space. I know a man who started feeling tension and heaviness in his home. After receiving a gift from a family member, arguments increased, the atmosphere became heavy, and peace was gone. He prayed and sought God's guidance, and when his spirit was drawn to that particular object, he removed it, prayed over his home, and peace returned immediately. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes what we accept with open hands might come with a spiritual cost. Be vigilant about what you allow into your home, even gifts. Not everything meant to bless you truly does. It's time to take a spiritual inventory of what you've been holding on to. Ask God to reveal anything in your home that might be keeping you tied to a past He's already called you to leave behind. The enemy knows that if he can't get you to go back, he will try to keep you looking back, stuck in old cycles, old pain, old struggles. As long as your hands grip the past, you won't have the capacity to receive what God has prepared for your future. This is a spiritual truth that many overlook. You can't move forward when you're still carrying what was meant to be left behind. God calls us to walk in freedom, peace, and His presence. That means clearing out anything in your life or home that doesn't align with His kingdom. It's hard, but it's necessary. When you make space for God, He fills it with His power, joy, and unshakable peace. Don't let old ties become spiritual chains. Release them and watch how God's blessings flow freely. There is a spiritual law many overlook, but it is simple and powerful. Whatever you welcome, you give permission to stay. When you let something in, whether it's an object, a habit, or an agreement, you are giving it a place in your home, your life, and your atmosphere. Some doors don't open because of what you say, but because of what you tolerate. Many wonder why their home feels restless, why peace seems out of reach, why tension hangs heavy in the air. They think it's just stress, life, or a difficult season. But often, it's the unseen presence of something invited in without realizing the spiritual weight it carries. This is why vigilance is key. Guard what you allow into your home and heart. The enemy needs only an open door, a small foothold, to enter and create strongholds that steal your peace and joy. Be mindful of what you welcome. Your spiritual atmosphere depends on it. Many people don't realize that some objects in their homes carry more than just sentimental value. Some objects hold hidden spirits, energies, or influences tied to darkness or other powers. These objects may have come from places or people with ungodly connections, or they might have been dedicated to something outside of God's kingdom. A man once shared how his home changed after receiving a gift from a family member. At first, he ignored the subtle shift, the increase in arguments, the tension, the heaviness in the air. But when he prayed and sought God's guidance, he discovered the gift was carrying a spirit that did not belong. When he removed it, peace returned instantly. This story is a warning. Objects are not just things. In the spiritual realm, they can be doorways. Be careful what you allow to remain in your space. It's time to take an honest inventory of what you've been holding on to. Objects, gifts, keepsakes, and memories that might be binding you to a past God has already freed you from. These things might look harmless, even precious, but if they carry spiritual weight or ungodly connections, they keep you trapped. Ask God to reveal anything in your home or life that's holding you back. It could be a ring from a past relationship, an artifact with unknown origins, or even a habit or mindset that acts as an invisible chain. The enemy's goal is to keep you looking backward, stuck in old cycles, but God calls you to walk forward in freedom, peace, and His presence. Let go of anything that doesn't align with that calling. The enemy knows that if he can't get you to go back to old places, he can at least keep you looking back. He uses objects, memories, and attachments as anchors to hold you in place. Rings, letters, clothes, gifts, anything that symbolizes a past relationship, a past sin, or an old struggle can act like chains around your spirit. Even if you've walked away in your heart, holding on to these things keeps a door open. It's like carrying invisible weights that slow your progress and weigh down your soul. This is why God calls us to release what no longer serves us, to make room for the new, the fresh, the blessings He wants to pour into our lives. Are you ready to break those chains? The first step is letting go. Sometimes it's not just what we hold on to from our past, it's what others give us. A gift can look innocent, a statue, a piece of art, a carved figure, but it may carry a spirit that doesn't serve God. Maybe it was prayed over by someone with bad intentions, or it was given out of jealousy or bitterness. One man shared how his home changed after receiving a certain gift from a family member. At first, he ignored it, but tension rose, arguments increased, and a strange heaviness filled the air. Nothing seemed to help until he finally prayed and removed that object. Immediately, peace returned. Be careful what you welcome into your home. Not all gifts carry blessing, some bring burdens. Ask God for discernment about the things you allow in your space. It's time to take a spiritual inventory of what you're holding on to. What objects, memories, or habits are keeping you tied to places God has already freed you from? The enemy wants you stuck looking back, gripping the past, so you can't fully receive your future. Ask God to reveal anything in your home or life that is holding you captive. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes it's disguised as something sentimental or harmless. But if it's connected to pain, bondage, or darkness, it must be removed. When you make space by letting go, God fills that space with His power, joy, and unshakable peace. Freedom begins with what you choose to keep and what you choose to release. There is a spiritual law many overlook. Whatever you welcome, you give permission to stay. When you allow something into your home, whether an object, a habit, or an agreement, you give it a place in your life and atmosphere. Some doors don't open because of what you say, but because of what you tolerate. The enemy uses small openings to enter and influence your space. Restlessness, tension, anxiety, they often come from unseen spiritual invitations we've unknowingly given. Be vigilant. Guard your home and your heart. What you welcome shapes your environment and your spiritual health. Choosing carefully what you allow in is the first step to walking in God's peace and protection. Many wonder why they feel restless in their own homes, why peace seems elusive, or why tension lingers in the air. They chalk it up to stress or life's challenges, but often, it's the unseen presence of something given a right to stay. This presence could come from objects, habits, or even words spoken carelessly. When you tolerate anything that doesn't align with God's kingdom, you leave a door open for negative spiritual influence. Recognize this: your home is a spiritual atmosphere. What dwells there affects your mind, emotions, and soul. When you become aware and remove what doesn't belong, you invite God's peace to settle deeply. A man once shared how his home felt heavy and uncomfortable despite living there for years. He carried anxiety and exhaustion every night, unaware of the source. Eventually, he realized that objects he had collected, souvenirs from places tied to idolatry, decorations from cultures worshiping other gods, were carrying spiritual weight. Though they seemed harmless, these things opened doors to spirits that disturbed his peace. When he removed those objects and prayed over his home, the heaviness lifted, anxiety fled. For the first time in years, he slept peacefully. This story shows how powerful the unseen influence of objects and symbols can be. What you allow in your home can either invite peace or unrest. Your home is more than walls and furniture. It is a spiritual atmosphere. It should be a sanctuary where God's presence dwells and His peace rests. But when you allow objects or habits tied to darkness, you unknowingly invite the wrong spirits into your space. It might be movies, music, books, or even decorations that glorify ungodly things. These create footholds for the enemy. Even small compromises can grow into strongholds if left unchecked. Recognizing that your environment influences your spirit is crucial. Cleansing your home isn't just about cleaning, it's about reclaiming your space for God. Removing what doesn't align with His kingdom is the first step to experiencing true freedom and peace at home. A woman once shared how her children had constant nightmares no matter how much she prayed or blessed them. She later discovered dark-themed toys in their room, things she had bought without realizing their spiritual weight. The moment she removed those items, peace returned. The torment stopped. This shows the power of removing ungodly influences from your home. What you allow in your home matters. The enemy doesn't need an open invitation, just a small door to enter. If you leave even a foothold for darkness, it can grow into a stronghold. Be vigilant. Protect your family's spiritual atmosphere. When you remove what doesn't belong, you create space for God's peace and protection to fill your home. Your home is more than a physical space. It's a spiritual battlefield and a sanctuary. When you take authority over what is allowed inside, you declare that no dark presence can remain. Cleansing your home isn't just about removing objects. It's a spiritual declaration: you have no place here. It's about filling your space with things that glorify God, invite His presence, and push away anything that doesn't align with His kingdom. When you stand firm, God's peace will settle in your home, heaviness will lift, and freedom will reign. Remember, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Choose to walk in victory. Protect your home. Make space for God's power, joy, and unshakable peace to fill every corner of your life. This is your call to reclaim your space and live in the fullness of God's presence.